Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive? It's been a wild week in crypto, huh? Especially with all this USCID stuff blowing up,
Yeah, things are getting pretty interesting out there.
to say the least. So, to help us make sense of it all, we're going to be taking a close look at a single audio source for this deep dive. Blockchain DXB.mp3 from February 10th, 2025.
Sounds good. I've heard some rumblings about this one.
Oh, it's juicy. We've got government drama, potential Bitcoin reserves, and even a little bit of AI art for good measure. But first, let's set the stage.
Paint me a picture.
Well, the crypto market is a bit shaky right now, with Bitcoin dipping below $100,000. Not great, but the real drama is unfolding in U.S. politics, and it has the potential to shake things up even more.
I'm all ears.
Okay, so the big story everyone's talking about is USCID. You might remember it as USCID, but it seems like they got a bit of a rebrand. So what exactly is USCID, and why should we care?
Well, USCID was created with the goal of modernizing federal technology and software, making the government more efficient. It all sounds pretty straightforward on paper, but...
Oh, there's always a but. What's the catch?
Well, the newly formed DOGE department, headed by none other than Elon Musk, has been tasked with auditing USCID. And what they're finding is, shall we say, a little concerning.
Wait, hold up. The Doge department, is this a real thing?
Oh, it's as real as it gets. And they're not holding back. They're alleging some serious misallocation of funds, even suggesting that USAID might be funneling money to media organizations for, let's just say, questionable purposes.
Wow, this is getting spicy. But what does all this political drama have to do with Bitcoin?
More than you might think. If these allegations hold any weight, and we're talking about potential corruption and inefficiency on a massive scale, it could have a huge ripple effect across the entire financial system.
So you're saying that if people lose faith in traditional institutions, they might start looking for alternatives, like maybe Bitcoin.
Exactly. Think about it. Bitcoin is decentralized. It's not controlled by any government or financial institution. So in times of uncertainty, it starts to look a lot more appealing as a stable and trustworthy asset.
I can see that. But let's not forget, the U.S. government still holds a lot of power. What happens if they decide to double down on control instead of embracing decentralization?
That's the million-dollar question, and it leads us to another juicy piece of this puzzle: the potential for a U.S. Bitcoin reserve.
Wait, a Bitcoin reserve? Is the U.S. government really considering going all in on Bitcoin?
Well, it's not that simple. There have been whispers, especially after a statement from former President Trump.
Oh, what does he say?
He basically said that the government wouldn't be selling any of its existing Bitcoin holdings, but, and this is key, he didn't promise to buy more.
So, classic non-committal Trump. But it definitely leaves the door open for speculation. What about other players in the U.S.? Are there any signs of movement at the state level?
Absolutely. In fact, this is where things get even more interesting. We're seeing a lot of action at the state level, with 15 states, all with Republican-led legislatures, actively working on legislation to establish their own Bitcoin reserves.
Whoa, hold on. Individual states creating their own mini Bitcoin Fort Knoxes.
Yeah.
That's wild. Any states in particular leading the charge?
Keep an eye on Arizona and Utah. They seem to be the furthest along in the process, and their actions could set a precedent for other states, maybe even countries.
I'll definitely be watching them closely. This is a whole new level of Bitcoin adoption, and it's happening right under our noses. This deep dive is already full of surprises. But before we move on, I want to talk about privacy, specifically the case of Tornado Cash.
Ah, yes, Tornado Cash. It's a fascinating story that really highlights the tension between privacy and regulation in the crypto space. For those who don't know, Tornado Cash is an Ethereum transaction mixer.
Actually, can you explain what a transaction mixer is for those who might not be familiar?
Sure, it's basically a tool that allows you to obscure the origin of your crypto transactions. It makes it a lot harder to trace where the funds came from or where they're going. Think of it as a digital privacy shield.
Got it. So back to Tornado Cash. The Biden administration sanctioned it back in 2022, and one of its developers, Alexei Pertsev, was even imprisoned. What's the latest on that?
Well, there's been a pretty surprising turn of events. Pertsev has actually been released on bail pending his appeal.
That's a win for privacy advocates, right? But wait, didn't a U.S. appeals court rule those sanctions were lawful?
You're right, they did. And this is where the political divide comes back into play. The ruling came from a court in Texas, a state with a Republican-led government.
So we have a right-leaning court upholding sanctions on a privacy tool, while a developer potentially benefits from a more lenient approach under a different jurisdiction. It's like two completely different versions of crypto regulation are happening at the same time.
It definitely shows how complex and, frankly, contradictory the situation is right now. Governments are still figuring out how to approach this new technology, and the lines are definitely blurred. It's a reminder that the future of privacy in the crypto world is far from settled.
It feels like every step forward comes with a new set of challenges. This deep dive is really making me think. But before we get too lost in the regulatory maze, let's shift gears and talk about some of the more fun and creative things happening in the crypto space.
Sounds good to me. Where do you want to start?
Let's talk about NFTs, specifically music NFTs. Remember when putting music on the blockchain was the next big thing back in the early days of Ethereum?
Oh, I remember it well. Imogen Heap and her Mycelia for Music project come to mind. It was a bold vision, but it never really took off.
Well, maybe Sony's about to change that. They've just launched their first music NFT collection on their blockchain platform, Sonium.
Really? Tell me more.
The collection features unreleased tracks from a Tokyo-based producer named Nui, hosted on Sony's own NFT marketplace called Sova. Each NFT is priced at 0.77 ETH, which was about $211 at the time. Not too bad, considering the current market.
So Sony is using its brand recognition and existing infrastructure to try and make music NFTs happen. It's a smart move, but will it be enough to bring it to the masses? That's the big question.
Only time will tell, but I think other artists and labels will be watching closely. If Sony can pull it off, it could have a huge impact on the music industry.
I agree. This could be a turning point.
Speaking of turning points, let's talk about another art world disruptor, AI.
Ah, yes. The rise of the machines, or at least the rise of machines making art, it's certainly shaking things up.
Even the most prestigious auction houses are taking notice. Christie's, known for selling some of the most expensive art in the world, is hosting its first AI-exclusive auction called Augmented Intelligence. Talk about a statement.
It's definitely a sign that AI art is gaining legitimacy, even among those who were initially skeptical. The auction is featuring works from over 20 notable digital artists, some pretty big names in the AI art scene.
Any pieces in particular catch your eye?
There's one that I think you might appreciate. It's a real-time artwork that changes as the bids increase.
Whoa, that's amazing. It's like the artwork is evolving along with the auction itself. What kind of technology goes into something like that?
It's a great example of how AI is pushing the boundaries of what's possible with art. It's not just about the technology itself, but also about the bigger questions it raises about creativity, originality, and what we even consider to be art.
It's definitely making us rethink the art world as we know it. But before we get too deep into the philosophical implications, let's zoom out for a second and look at what's happening on a regional level.
Sounds good. What are you thinking?
Well, we've talked a lot about the U.S., but it's not the only place where interesting things are happening in crypto. You mentioned something about Ras Al Khaimah, or RAK, making some moves, right?
Right. They're launching a $2 million accelerator program specifically for Web3 startups. We're talking blockchain, AI, gaming, the whole shebang. And the funding is coming from XDC Network.
So they're really putting their money where their mouth is. What about other countries in the region? Are they keeping pace?
Saudi Arabia is definitely one to watch, especially in the field of AI. Their Saudi Data for Artificial Intelligence Authority, or SDIA for short, is running a program with the Apple Developer Academy to train developers in all sorts of AI concepts, from computer vision to natural language processing and even generative AI.
Wow, it sounds like the Middle East is becoming a real hotbed for tech and innovation, with governments actively investing in Web3 and AI. This could have major implications on the global stage.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that the crypto revolution is a global phenomenon, and we're seeing exciting developments all over the world.
It's incredible how much is happening, even in just a single week. But before we get too carried away, I think we need to take a moment to process all this information. It's a lot to take in. It really is mind-boggling when you think about it, isn't it? I mean, from government audits to AI art auctions, it's like we're living in a science fiction novel sometimes.
I know, right? It's a constant stream of new stuff popping up, new ideas, new tech. It can be a bit overwhelming trying to keep up with it all.
Exactly. And that's why I think these deep dives are so important, to help us cut through all the noise and focus on what really matters.
Absolutely. Connect the dots, see the bigger picture, and figure out what it all means for the future.
Speaking of connecting the dots, we've talked a lot about this push and pull between decentralization and, well, centralized control in the crypto world. With governments exploring Bitcoin reserves, individual states doing their own thing, it's like we're witnessing a tug of war between two different visions for the future.
It's fascinating, right? On the one hand, you have something like the USCID audit, fueling distrust in traditional institutions and pushing people towards decentralized solutions like Bitcoin. But then on the other hand, you have governments themselves recognizing the potential of Bitcoin and trying to figure out how to integrate it into their own systems.
It's a weird dance, isn't it? Innovation and regulation, each trying to find its footing in this new world. Where do you see this all heading? Is it a battle where one side will win out eventually, or is there a way for both to coexist?
Honestly, that's the million-dollar question. Nobody can predict the future, especially in the crypto world. But I do think finding the right balance is key. A balance between innovation and regulation, individual freedom, and collective responsibility.
Makes sense. It can't be all one or the other. We need to find a way for these different forces to work together. But let's be real, this isn't just about governments and big institutions, is it? It's about the people who are actually using and building these technologies every day. So what role do we play in shaping this future?
Our role is more important than ever, I think. We have to stay informed, engaged, and critical. Ask tough questions, challenge assumptions, and demand transparency. We can't just blindly follow the hype or get swept up in fear-mongering. We have to think for ourselves and make informed decisions.
Think for ourselves. I love that. We're not just watching this happen, we're active participants. And the choices we make really do matter.
Absolutely. And one of those choices is how we choose to engage with the creative and artistic side of all of this. We've talked about music NFTs and AI art, but that's really just scratching the surface.
I know, right? It's mind-blowing when you think about all the possibilities. Art, music, literature, gaming. The potential for blockchain to disrupt and transform these industries is incredible.
It really is. It's about redefining ownership, empowering creators, and connecting with audiences in whole new ways, democratizing access to art and culture.
I'm totally geeking out here. This is what I love about crypto. It's not just about finance and technology. It's about pushing boundaries and exploring the frontiers of human creativity.
It's definitely inspiring.
But okay, let's bring it back down to earth for a second. We've talked a lot about the big picture, the global trends, the philosophical stuff. But at the end of the day, it's the real-world impacts and personal stories that really bring it all home.
You're right. We can talk about market caps and tech specs all day long, but it's the human element that gives it all meaning.
For sure. So let's zoom in a little and focus on some of those real-world impacts. For example, we were talking about RAK launching this Web3 accelerator program. What kind of impact could something like that have on the local community?
Well, it has the potential to create jobs, attract talent, and foster innovation. It could turn RAK into a hub for blockchain startups, drawing investment from all over the world. And it could empower local entrepreneurs, giving them the tools and resources they need to build and scale their own businesses.
That's incredible. It's like a ripple effect, starting with a single initiative and spreading outwards to create real change. And it's not just limited to RAK either. We're seeing similar things happening all around the globe.
Exactly. It's a global movement that's gaining momentum every day.
And that brings us back to the balance of power. If these regional hubs continue to grow and flourish, could we see a shift away from the traditional centers of power in the crypto world?
It's definitely a possibility. We're already seeing a more decentralized landscape emerge. With innovation happening in all corners of the globe, the old power structures are being challenged, and new players are rising up.
It's like the wild west of tech out there. Exciting, unpredictable, and maybe a little bit scary all at the same time.
That's a pretty accurate description. A time of great opportunity and great uncertainty, which makes it all the more compelling.
Okay, I have to ask. We've covered so much in this deep dive, from government audits and Bitcoin reserves to music NFTs and AI art auctions. My brain is officially full. But what's the one big takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
That's a good question. I think the most important thing to remember is that the future of crypto isn't set in stone. It's something that we're actively shaping through our choices, our actions, our engagement. It's a collaborative effort, and everyone has a role to play.
I love that. It's a message of empowerment and responsibility. We're not just along for the ride, we're the ones steering the ship.
Exactly. And that's both exciting and a little daunting, but ultimately, it's up to us to decide what kind of future we want to create.
Well said. We've talked a lot about global trends, technological advancements, and the big picture stuff. But now it's time to bring it all home. How does this all connect back to our own lives?
I agree. How can we apply these insights to our personal journeys in the crypto space? How can we navigate this complex and ever-changing landscape with confidence and clarity?
Those are some great questions. And
Yeah.
honestly, I think the answers will be different for everyone. But that's the beauty of it. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Absolutely. It's about finding what resonates with you, what aligns with your values, what excites you. It's about being curious, staying informed, and never stopping learning.
Couldn't have said it better myself. This deep dive has been a wild ride, but it's just the beginning, really. So let's keep exploring, keep questioning, keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in this crazy crypto world. It's been a wild ride, hasn't it? I mean, we've gone from government audits and Bitcoin reserves to AI, art, and music NFTs. It feels like we've covered a whole lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have, and it really highlights how dynamic and multifaceted the crypto world is, constantly evolving and throwing us curveballs.
Speaking of curveballs, one of the things that really stuck with me is what you said earlier about the future of crypto not being predetermined. That's a powerful idea.
It is, and it's something that we often forget in the midst of all the hype and speculation. At the end of the day, the future of crypto isn't some preordained destiny. It's something that we're actively shaping through our choices and actions.
So as we wrap up this episode, what are some key takeaways you want our listeners to remember? We've talked about a lot of complex and sometimes confusing stuff. What's the TLDR?
Well, I think it all boils down to a few fundamental principles. First and foremost, stay informed. The crypto world is constantly changing, and it's crucial to keep up with the latest developments. Whether it's regulations, new tech, or market trends, knowledge is power.
So true. And don't just rely on one source of information either. Get out there, explore different perspectives, challenge your own assumptions, and form your own opinions.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask questions, even if they seem basic. The more you learn, the better equipped you'll be to navigate this space.
Okay, so stay informed, ask questions. What else?
Engage. Don't just sit on the sidelines and watch things happen. Get involved, join the conversation, and contribute. Whether you're a developer, an artist, an investor, or just someone who's curious about this stuff, your voice matters.
I love that. It's not a spectator sport. It's something we're all building together.
And last but not least, don't forget to have fun. Crypto can be serious business, but it's also a space filled with creativity, innovation, and a sense of possibility. So explore, experiment, and enjoy the ride.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, this has been an incredible journey, and I want to thank everyone for tuning in and diving deep with us.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure. I hope you've all learned something new, maybe sparked your curiosity, and maybe even discovered a new passion or two.
Yeah, and remember, this is just the beginning. The crypto world is full of surprises, challenges, and opportunities. So stay curious, stay engaged, and keep exploring.
Until next time, happy crypto adventuring.